security testing is something which is pivotal and mandatory to establish a safe transformation for both the employees and the customers.
Quality is the responsibility of the team. The QA professional needs to be that subject matter expert.
Get QA involved as early as you're determining the strategy.
Agile needs a QA mindset that is completely changed. If you have a guy who's coming into Agile with a waterfall mindset, then that guy is not a QA.
Hello, and welcome to the Future Strategies in Engineering Quality series, brought to you by the Business Transformation Network and their editor and your host, me, Claudia Falzon. This interview was part of a video series in partnership with A1QA. A1QA is a next-generation software testing provider offering a full range of QA services for more than 19 years. As always, if you enjoy our podcast, please subscribe and leave a review. All links from the conversation will be shared in the show notes or whichever app you listen to your podcasts on. You can also watch the full series at the btn.tv. So let's go ahead and get straight into it. Today with us, we are joined by Deepak Chinnam, who is the Head of Cross-Platform Services at WPP. Now today, Deepak will look at discussing software quality and what it is for different companies. He will also be looking at how narrow-focused quality assurance specialists make the project more effective than cross-functional QA engineers. So thank you so much for joining us today, Deepak. If you could just start by giving us a little introduction to yourself and your role for our listeners.
My name is Deepak Chinnam. I am the head of cross-platform services in WPP, where I look after QA, data, service desk, and service management platforms. And the biggest team that I run there is the QA one.
Amazing. Thank you for that. So starting with the first question, what would you say software quality is for different companies?
If you actually go to a product company, the software quality means so much different to a services company. So when I was in services company, I've actually seen this as a necessary evil, because being a developer, whatever you do never fails, right? So, these testing guys, they're there to find things. No. So the mindset actually changes depending on who you speak to. And if you're actually in BT, for example, right? When we are working, we are constantly have to think about the end user experience. So for us, the software quality is very much linked to how the end user is able to use the system. Is that exactly how they felt, or they intuitively felt that they were using it, right? So even if you have zero defects, but it was like a rocket science for them to deal with it, then our software quality is not what it meant to be. So one of the key aspects for us is really understanding the end user experience and using that to drive our software quality. For me, it's a fine balance. In the end, if you could see, the common thread there is it working as it is intended for the people that we are delivering that software to?
Now moving on to the next question. How do narrow-focused QA specialists make a project more effective than cross-functional QA engineers?
I actually divide it into the people who are defining what, and there are people who are doing the how, right? So the people who actually have to define what has to be done, or the people who has to have that cross-functional knowledge, the wider knowledge, how does this particular program or the project is fitting into the bigger delivery, that bigger services that your project or your company or your program are delivering to, right? So for that, you actually need to understand the wider picture. So you should have the wider knowledge of, let's say you're working on a system A, how does it link to system B and system C, where even though your system that you're working on is not a direct has interface with the users, how it kind of feeds into the systems that are going into the user interface, and actually driving that experiences, that acceptance criteria back into the system can only be done by the cross-functional guys, right? Because these are the people who understand the wider estate. They are really good in business, and in fact they bring something that no one else can bring. Now the second part of this is when you have the how part, right? The architects are really good on defining, hey, this is what we want, and somebody has to say, yeah, that's good, but for this to really work, we have to use this particular tool. We have to think of, our strategy should use this particular tool to go and automate, and this automate should be codeless, whereas this percentage of thing cannot be automated. This person we have to do manually, and you need people who understand XYZ to do that, right? So that's where you need the specialist. So the focus that I have is we are kind of building teams which will have most of our cross-functional guys on the early phases. These are the ones who are architecting the quality journey. And then I have the guys who go deep, who actually make those things happen, especially when we are thinking about automation first, right? These QA guys, the cross-functional guys, they know it has to be automated. They know they want to automate, but they don't know how. And that's when they bring the people, the guys who can go deep in and make that a reality. It's almost like an analogy of, in building, you have architects who do the blueprint, but then you need a builder who can actually build it. And within that, you need an electrician who has to focus on electrical. So very similar to that here as well, right? So if you have a performance testing to be done, you bring a person who understands the performance really well, has got a good grasp of the various tools that we have and how to test it, how many levels, what level of load that you need to put on the system, what is that? So they'll ask a different set of questions. Similarly, you have a security guy, they will have a completely different question. So the project actually needs both of them, and for me, both of them are like two eyes. I can't pick a right or left eye as more important. Both are needed.
Wow, what a great point there. And would you say that Agile needs QA, or would you say that QA needs Agile in order to be successful?
Does QA need Agile? No, because QA actually can apply the same principles. For example, you are in a waterfall project. How does it work currently? You have a BA who's actually going and speaking to business. He's doing it on his own. And then he gives the requirements over to an SA. That solution architect is saying, okay, these are the requirements, and I know the system. I can squeeze it here, or I can shave this and I can fit into this. And then he's giving that to a developer who's then taking that design and developing. And then the QA team, who are actually testing team, rather not a QA team, then looking at this design and then saying whether the developer actually has developed based on. So these are all almost like people throwing one over to another, to another, to another. However, even in that model, if we have this collaboration saying, when during the requirements, the BA, SA, and the QA and SA quality architect sit together, ask the questions to business saying, are you sure? Do you understand? This is how the process happens. This particular change that you're saying is a real outlier. Are you sure this has to be in the system? Or do you know what acceptance criteria is? Are you very clear? How are you going to use it? And when you start asking those questions, what we found out is business also start thinking, oh, man, I did not think about that. And then guess what? Most of the defects that come as a requirement miss or a design miss, they all are filtered out at that phase, because three teams are together understanding really well what exactly the business is looking for. So as you rightly said, it actually comes to a complete shift in the mindset, not only for testing team, but for everybody, right? You should see this as we are all responsible for quality. We are all responsible for our end user's experience. We all have accountability to make sure that we deliver what we promised to deliver. It's not testing team's job to find the problems. Each of us should take accountability. And the next step is, as we had clarity on what we are building, the testing team can start automating even before the code is ready. So you're not kind of throwing back and forth. And in an ideal world, and that's what we're trying to go to, is you build a script, and you can actually give that script almost like a Lego brick. You're doing smaller things, and they all come together. You actually give that to a unit testing team and say, how do you know your things will work fine? When the script actually gives you a green, right? And then how do you know that something is ready for at a component level? When all these things come together and the computer says yes. So you're kind of building automatically your agile and DevOps kind of pipeline by thinking differently.
And how do you approach quality budgeting?
Most of the time, it's basically people telling you, okay, development is 100, so industry standard is 30, so you get 30, right? So what I'm actually the change in attitude that we are bringing, and that's at least we tried, and then we're kind of trying to really push hard is, don't look at the budgets like quality, like development, like BA. Look at total cost of ownership. So if let's say you have to spend 40 with QA, but the overall becomes 120, you save 10, right? So look at that bigger picture. So what are we trying to do? So everybody should really understand how the overall budget sits. And when I'm asking something, even when I go to people, I say, look, I'm asking you for extra 10, but what I promise to you is I'll eliminate 20 in here, I'll eliminate 40 in here. So I'll give you about 50 back by taking that 10. And most important part there is, you have to deliver the promises that you made. You can't use that as a sales strategy and then forget about it. If you do it, you may be successful once, you may be successful twice. At some point, people will say, yeah, they always say that, but anyway, they'll make me spend more. So we are shifting that focus into delivering the total cost of quality, as we call. It's linked to everywhere, not just the QA teams.
Now, moving on to the last question, what 3 aspects of digital transformation should QA professionals be involved in?
So one of the first thing that the QA should be heavily involved in is understanding the business that they are supporting, the users they are supporting. If you don't understand the business, if you don't understand the users, whatever transformation you do will never be right, because you are not transforming for the users, you're transforming it for what you think is the transformation. So having that clarity is super crucial. So that's what I keep saying, lean right, shift left. So you have to lean right heavily onto business, and you start thinking like business. And second thing is having a good understanding of the system, the estate also, right? That's where we see people most of the time. You see the testing team as a bunch of people sitting on their chairs, looking at an Excel sheet, say step 1, step 2, step 3, and then following step 1, step 2, step 3. That's not what we're looking for. We are looking for the bigger picture, as they call, at least what we calling them as a QA architect should definitely have this very deeply ingrained, which is understanding the technical aspects, not a complete deep in-depth of APIs, etc. Just to know that, okay, this system is connected to this system through this. And then finally, the third one is automation first. So if you are not automating fast enough, so even kind of moving away from saying regression automation is automation, you need to say automation has to start from gathering requirements. Automation has to then flow into your design. And that actually, this is what we call as automating the automated scripts. So your automation should then give you the scripts that can be used by everybody, right? So as I first initially said, it's a combination of the architecture, the QA architecture, and the how part, which is the QA technical part. And then finally, having that constant business involvement. Now, when is the most effective thing for quality? Obviously, when you start, right? You have to be involved. And that's one thing that I'm seeing many companies missing out massively. And it's a big deal for us to even get there.
Wow, some really good points there. So I think that's concluded our conversation really nicely. So thank you for joining us today, Deepak. We have really enjoyed having you on here. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. We really hope it gave you a little bit more of an insight into the future strategies in engineering quality. To learn more about A1QA and quality assurance services, please visit a1qa.com. For more content like this, please subscribe to the BTN website. We hope to see you next time for another fascinating conversation.